We got too much fun just breaking the rule. Yeah, we like causing trouble when it's me and it's you. Build this, build that, roll it up, kick back, come with me, watch the sky fade to black. Been away for a long time, Saturday, and it's alright. No one has to know where we go, we go. And been away for a long time, got away. Oh, this time no one has to know where we go now. Okay. Hello, orchid addicts of all various colors and shapes, and bask in the gloriousness of the sun haloing behind me. So, I've been gone for a long time. Just like the lyrics I just read to you. Goldfish. So, yeah, as you can already probably guess, when I fade or jump off the planet, as I like to say, it's usually when something extremely excruciating or shitty happens in my life. So, I've been going through a tough time. I've been going through it for actually 2 years. And I've recently, well, been struggling with a lot of anxiety. I mean, of course, young people these days, pathetic. So I've, listened here and there, talked to my therapist because I have that, and discovered that I am burnt out, or should I say, have what do you call it? Chronic exhaustion, chronic fatigue. I have chronic fatigue. My sleep schedule is completely off. I can't fall asleep. I wake up every morning feeling a hangover and all that stuff. Gorgeous, darling. And it's all because of two brilliant people. Not gonna go into details, but right now I just want to introduce the video, announce where I've been gone and all that stuff. Shit has started happening like since the middle of December, I think, so judging from my previous experiences, I'm probably going to be fine around the middle of April, so you can expect me being back on my high horse. By that time, it's a pattern. People like that word these days. Got a bad pattern over there. You need to work on your patterns. Yeah, fuck you. I'll probably replace all these swearings with duck or dog noises, I don't know. But in any case, come and join my fun and activities, and let's proceed on to the February Orchid collection updates. There's nothing much really going on, nothing much worth showing. It's the middle of winter, so nothing much is growing, but at least the weather is utterly glorious. Just look. Oh! So yeah, thank you. Thank you for checking in. Let's go and look at plants. Right as I'm about to go and walk around the village with my nephew, who's a ball of energy. Adrian, skrienam. Skrienam. Kurš ātrāk? Uz to pusi. Skrienam. Davai. 1, 2, 3. Jo, kurš ātrāk? And that's how it ends. Alrighty then, I'm back indoors. It's already dark by the time I got playing with my nephew. He's a real ball of energy. We were rolling around in the snow, and we also cleaned up some of the snow and went to the shop together, so it was good fun. I feel exhausted. It's really the chronic fatigue works in miraculous ways because, first off, I drink a hilarious amount of coffee these days, literally hilarious. And I'm starting to try to lower it down a little bit. And also, smoking is a big theme in my life. So I'm trying to move away gently from it. But everything is fine until one moment, the anxiety clicks, and then you feel horrible. But okay, let's not dwell on that. You know, you don't really get to a more positive place when you dwell on negative place. You could really see my tired eyes. I am having a fun time, definitely. So yeah, well, it's also really interesting because for me it's really, really gruesome to get up in the morning, and but I have a couple of responsibilities. I have courses where I'm learning esoterics, parapsychology, and various types of basic psychology. It's really interesting. Some of the subjects over there are arguably ridiculous, but most of them are quite practical and useful in some ways. And I am definitely a geek for astrology. I literally got a certificate in astrology, so I love it. It really explains, you know, everybody's looking for their life purpose and all that stuff, and astrology can really help look into that. And I've definitely noticed that many of people's significant life events line up with certain astrological placements, so there is some merit to that, even though it's not really a science or anything, proven, but it's a form of information that can be very useful, and many people are actually interested in some level of mysticism. So yeah, when I get to doing my responsibilities and all that stuff and socialize with people, I get more energy and I get going and I can actually do stuff. But after I sleep, after I get up, I feel like I haven't rested at all and all that stuff. So that's great. And I put the music for this video in the background so I wouldn't have to separately edit that in, because that's bloody exhausting right now. I'm really forcing myself to do stuff, but it's good. It's good. It's like when you feel really down, you gotta force yourself to get up. You gotta do in life. And yeah, I'm gonna show you some of my work. So let's do it. So here are my glorious plants, and nothing much is really happening. Um, my Cycnodes Wine Delight over here, it already bloomed. Here's the spike. I haven't cut it off because I just wanted to show it to you. And it dries out really nicely. I usually let all the yellow leaves fall off when it's going into its dormancy. And so it could suck all the energy back into the pseudobulbs and all that stuff. The old pseudobulb was really shriveled, so yesterday when I was watering my orchids, I gave it a little bit water so it wouldn't dehydrate too far, but only just a little bit. So, it wouldn't have any ideas, In the winter season, most of the catasetum types, I do believe, and some of the cattleya types need much less water. Dendrobiums also are in that category. So they need much less water and basically no fertilizer. And do be careful to not give them too much because simply the plant's roots won't be really uptaking that moisture, so you can lead to some rot, which is very undesirable and arguably the number one cause for orchid death. But here I wanted to show you my Cycnodes. He's working on a new growth over here. I think that's pretty early compared to its usual, pattern of growth, but I'm really happy to see that. And here is its division. This is one of the older pseudobulbs I do. No, this is the recent pseudobulb, yeah. This is the oldest pseudobulb. Was created the next year. I divided it so I would end up with two plants, as you can see over here. This orchid, this summer, it was mounted outside on a tree. It didn't really start developing roots, so at around September, I do believe, I transplanted it into some live sphagnum moss, and it grew up a little bit, matured its pseudobulb, so it's kind of okay, even though it didn't really have the energy to grow up larger. I have some plans on modifying my outdoor growing experiment for the orchids, because the apple tree which I was growing my orchids on, it was decent, but it's also old. So the foliage cover on that tree is sparse because the branches are old and kind of don't have the vigorous leaf coverage. So I want to put a net over places where the sun goes through the sky, so
there would be some filtering, so the orchid leaves wouldn't burn as much and they wouldn't need so much water. Because the more sun you have, the more the water is going to evaporate. So orchids, especially Catasetum type, are very water loving. And what we have over here is this older pseudobulb is slowly going away, but I really don't believe this is rot. If this would be rot, you would see some black markings and signs of mold and all that stuff. But this is definitely squishy. I think this is a natural process for Catasetum type of orchids. When they eat up some of the older pseudobulbs, you can see this happening on many different type of orchids actually. Dendrobiums, for example, sometimes the canes go yellow, and basically what happens is the orchid is sucking up all the excess nutrients stored in the pseudobulb, so it could transform that energy into new growth. So I do believe it's happening over here. And I'm going to let this pseudobulb just naturally, dry up and deliver all the nutrients in this growth. It will store those nutrients, and when it's going to start working on a new growth, then it's going to skyrocket. I don't know what I'm going to do with my Catasetum type of orchids this year. This is a small growth, so I don't really want to plunk it outside. I want it growing inside, so it would have the highest possible chances of maturing a very juicy, big, substantial new growth. So I think when it's going to start actively producing some new roots on its new growth, I'm going to just transplant it into a fresh batch of live sphagnum moss. I really enjoyed this setup. Of course, this sphagnum moss has dried out right now. I haven't watered my Catasetum types for well over a month, really. Okay, that aside, I wanted to show you also something suspicious coming on with my Alisara Tahoma Glacier, I do believe it's called. It's a gorgeous Oncidium type orchid with big white freckled star-shaped flowers, and it's very gorgeous. But for the past year or more, it has been behaving strangely. It matures its growths, flowers, and then drops its leaves instantaneously. Now that is not normal for Oncidium orchids to do, and it has been working on these new growths since like the middle of autumn, I do believe, and they're really progressing slowly. Now this might not be such a surprise because in the winter there's so much less sunlight that the orchids can't naturally grow as vigorously, and you may have noticed that many of the orchids which are working on new growths in the winter, they don't mature as big and sizable as they would do in the summer season. So this might be just, bad alignment of various environmental factors, but I'm quite suspicious that this orchid might be, one of the diseased ones in my collection, because it has the pattern of dropping leaves and it's really not vigorous at all. It lost its vigorousness. It was far more vigorous before. And also it's losing this pseudobulb over here, but it's once again, that's not rot, I don't believe. It's just drying out, and the whole plant is absorbing the nutrients from this pseudobulb. But the purpose of this is that I just wanted to show you this is a natural process which happens with your orchids. So you don't need to be so afraid of it when it happens. If you see black rot, then you should be concerned. But when you see just some normal yellowing, it's not that bad. But I will definitely be removing the pseudobulb because the green pigment and most of the minerals are most likely already absorbed by the orchid. So as a sign of precaution, I just want to remove this so it wouldn't have chances to actually start rotting and bring the plant down. It's really loose, so it's going to be easy to do that. Okay, this is my Phalaenopsis Sogoshito, yellow Phalaenopsis orchid. It's really glorious. Last year I broke its stem. Yeah, you can make it out here. I broke its stem, and the upper part was still alive. It wanted to produce some roots. But unfortunately, the breakage point was too big, so it dehydrated to death. And this is its basal keiki, and it's really growing on strongly. It looks really nice. And I am thinking about reporting this one into a smaller pot because you can see a lot of algae buildup, and the pot in the bottom of this is getting quite soggy, and most of the roots of this plant are actually on the top. So do be careful to not overpot your orchids. Ideally you would want the orchids to fill the whole pot with roots, and if they are not doing that, that might be too much of a big pot for them, so that promotes root rot actually. Want to lighten up the situation a little bit. Nice. This is my Rhyncholalia digbyana, a glorious orchid coming on strong, getting very bushy. Now, at the start of winter or in the autumn, it started working on these 3 new growths, and they're pushing on very successfully. I'm really proud of them. They're not going to probably grow as big as this one because they're maturing during the winter. They're going to be slightly reduced in their potential size, but the orchid is definitely healthy. The roots are fully taking over the pot. This orchid is ready for an upgrade in its pot, and as you can see, these new growths aren't pushing out roots quite yet. And as soon as they're going to start pushing out their roots, which they do in a big bunch when they're nearing maturity, I'm going to uppot this orchid so it's coming on strong. Really nice to look at it. And this is my, I do believe, Rhyncholalia glauca cross with Cattleya type. Rhyncholalia glauca crossed with Cattleya labiata. Quite excited for this orchid. I purchased it, I do believe, last year on my birthday. And as you can see, it's maturing 3 new growths over here. And of course, they are reduced in size because they are winter growths. But in any case, they are going to provide 3 different growth directions for this plant, which will allow it to bush up very fast in the long run. So it's nice, and the leaves are really glossy. It's nice to look at them. This is my yellow cymbidium orchid. It's doing very good. These are the new growths which were created last year from this original pseudobulb. As you can see, they're not as big as the original pseudobulb, but nevertheless they're adding to the size of the plant quite substantially. And currently it is working on a new growth, as you can see over here. So that is exciting. Currently it's around the middle of February. So the days are getting longer, and many of your orchids will be waking up and starting to work on their new growths, which is really lovely. Alrighty then, and here you can see the only 2 Phalaenopsis orchids which I have in bloom right now. As I mentioned before, there's nothing much really happening during the winter. This is my really nicely magenta colored, the Phalaenopsis Asantha Rogue. It's really holding on to its flowers. It's a really good bloomer. And as you can see, it's continuing to work on some new buds. So it just continues flowering and flowering. It's really gorgeous. It had some bud blast, but I think that's simply because of the lack of sun. Many people report that during winter they have a lot of bud blasts, so it's really not such a big surprise. If you have Phalaenopsis which grow a big spike and then they bloom all at once, and you cut that spike, you give the orchid a big period of rest so it can gather its energy and flower the next winter or autumn when the temperatures are triggering the blooming process. But if you let your Phalaenopsis orchids sequentially bloom, they're going to gradually be spending their stored up energy, so they won't have the opportunity to save up the energy to create a big glorious spike, because they're constantly expending their energy, especially if it's the winter and there's not so much sun, which would allow them to store the energy. And this is another one of my continuous bloomers. This is Phalaenopsis Haurgich Fancy. That's the way I choose to pronounce it, at least. And I really noticed it has a very different, bloom pattern, depending on the amount of light and temperatures. These blooms over here, this is It was created about 1.5 months ago, I think. So the bloom is slightly more narrow, but the color is still gorgeous. And as you can see, it's already starting to work on another bud, which is nice. This is a really gorgeous orchid, which produces a lot of flowers, to be, honest. And this is its most latest bloom. And as you can see, during the winter, it has a reduced pattern where you can see the gaps in between the pigment splotches. This is curious, but in colder temperatures, it doesn't produce as vivid colored flowers, you could say. And you can see the shape is definitely distorted. Now, this might be due to something genetic, but it also might be because of environmental factors, and I'm not sure. As you can see, this half of the flower has a bigger size, and this half of the flower has a smaller size. Yeah? So it's being unpleasantly distorted. But it's not a constant thing, so it's nothing too frightful. Maybe this is simply just a young plant, so it needs some time to, get going and produce uniform flowers, but not so much scared from that. This is my Phalaenopsis ludemaniana, and I was actually taken by surprise because it's working on 2 flower spikes. This orchid is recently purchased and it has never bloomed before. So I hope when spring starts rolling in, it's going to extend the flower spikes and start blooming. It's quite exciting. I'm a fan of Phalaenopsis species. And this over here is my. I purchased it quite a while ago, and it's a really floriferous orchid. LD's Bear King hybridized with Tetraspis. It has gorgeous orange colored peachy flowers which have a light fragrance. And as you can see, it has many flower spikes. This over here, I do believe, was sunburned. But since I do believe, beginning of winter or somewhere around that time, it extended this new flower spike and it wanted to produce new buds. Yeah, but as you can see here by some remnants, most all of the new buds which it produced during the winter blasted and fell off. That's not a surprise. Once again, it's not a big surprise when you have bud blast on orchids during the winter because they don't have enough sunlight. And this is a summer blooming type, so it's really not a surprise when it doesn't want to bloom in the winter. So when spring comes along, it should be blooming all through the summer and early autumn. Okay, and over here, I do believe this is my Rincolaleo Cattleya or something along those lines. Seo Ching Beauty Wiki, which is a gorgeous bright red colored Cattleya type, and this orchid are the same. I do believe this is a division, and as you can see, it's struggling. So let's look at the situation over here. Yeah, it's really poor. This sometimes happens. I took this deep dish vase thing and I stuck some sphagnum moss at the bottom of it and kept it watered. That's a really good method if you have Cattleya decisions and you need them to regrow some new roots. And this orchid was doing exactly that. It extended a new growth and started producing some new roots. But unfortunately, it might be because I overwatered or got some water in between the sheaths of this new growth. So basically speaking, it's rotted away. So the chances of survival of this division is non-existent anymore. And as you can see, it's really drying up. So I'm giving up on it. But I wanted to show this just an example. Be careful, to water your orchids properly and keep the sphagnum moss moist, but don't splash it on the new growths themselves when you're trying to resurrect divisions of a Cattleya. Because if the new growth rots, then it's lost, and the orchid will have a really hard time recovering from that. So that's it of this division, the end. And this is the mother plant. As you can see, it's bloody unruly. And I suppose you understand why I divided this section of the plant, because it was just going everywhere. And yeah, these two stubby pseudobulbs over here are its new latest growths, which it created under my care. Nothing to be proud about. And currently it's extending a new growth over here. Hopefully it's going to mature and create a actually, big sized new growth. But once again, this orchid is really suspicious. Maybe it is diseased because it's created small crooked growths. And as soon as they mature, the leaves start fading away, turning black and fall off. So I don't really know what's wrong with this orchid, but the leaves themselves are really not looking nice. So when spring comes, and if this growth is not going to, match up to my expectations, I might just get rid of it and just simply purchase a different type of bright red Cattleya orchid. Not a big crisis over here. And here are some of my newest little orchid seedlings. What is this? Rincostella vexativa. I do believe this is a primary hybrid, and as you can see, it's a single pseudobulb seedling. It had a smaller pseudobulb, but I removed it. But it's definitely coming along really nicely. It's super healthy, and right now it's starting to create its new growth. So very excited for that. This is, what do you call it? SLC Seagull's Raindrop cross with CTNA. Why not? I think the names were changed quite substantially. It's Goranthina or something like that. Why not? So basically, this is an intergenetic hybrid which has very interesting parents. So I'm really looking forward to what this orchid will give me. It's really curious. And what I wanted to show you is its new growths. During the winter, they're just slowly maturing. And that's once again because of the lower amounts of sunlight. So yeah, it's coming along slowly, but it should start up, rev up its engines and get going on when the sunshine becomes stronger. This is, I do believe this was a cross between a Sophronites and Myrmecata vola, also an intergeneric cross which should have very interesting progeny. And what I wanted to show you, it's currently working on its new growths. You can see one stub over here, one over here, and one over here. So yeah, it should bush up really nicely and we should be in for a treat this summer. This is my Oncidium Twinkle. It has some nasty splotches on its leaves, and it also created 3 flower spikes, one of which faded away, and the other ones lost some of their buds, so there's definitely something wrong with this orchid, and I can't really be sure what. It seems quite healthy, some roots going on over here, they are healthy. It will probably recover nicely. But as you can see, it's beginning to work on some new growths, as you can see over here. So it's making progress. Hopefully it's going to mature into a happier, stronger orchid. And that's all that I wanted to share with you at this moment. I'm glad to be back on YouTube, I suppose. This is my hobby. I enjoyed it greatly. So thanks for watching my video and stay tuned for more of this type of content. Cheerio.